Hi patrons, Scott here from the Introvert Power channel. In this video we're going to look at the opposite types in relationships. So firstly I just wanted to say welcome to the new patrons that have signed up this month. Welcome on board, thank you for your support, and I hope you get a lot out of the content on Patreon. So it's actually quite common for opposite types to find themselves together and even form lasting bonds and relationships. And I think I just want to preface by saying that there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a danger of that being overly criticized or like it's a death sentence. However, the reality is that a lot of people find themselves together with the opposite type, and there must be reasons for that, and that there is, because of that, there must be a pathway to go down that is life-giving, essentially, that there is hope and there is a possibility for depth of connection with opposite type relationships. Although, like any relationships, it has its challenges. So in this video, we're going to look at those challenges. So I think might be worth noting first that in any MBTI opposite type dynamics, looking at the functional stack, that the second and third function is the same, just in reverse. So in fact, obviously they share the same functions, but in reverse. But just noting that that second and third function is the same, but just opposite. So kind of in the middle of things, they are actually quite similar. Where the challenge is that first and fourth function, that dominant and inferior function, it being opposite is where the challenge and the attraction occurs. When you've got one person with an inferior function, that is the dominant function in the other person. That dominant function in the other person can look like a superpower, basically because for the other it's an inferior function, it's an elusive function, it's hard to connect to, it's underdeveloped, it's small, and having it as a dominant function in the other person, it can just give that sense of this other person, like there's an attraction to it, it's like they've got a superpower. There's an admiration for the other person to be so free in a function that is so elusive to the other person, and then of course vice versa. So that can be one element that can draw the opposite types together. And so it's like the opposite type pairing can have the best and the worst of things, in a sense that when not stressed, there can be a real vibrancy and a sort of a dynamic and an excitement about visiting the world of the other that is an elusive world for the other. So someone with that dominant function, it's like I can go into their world and experience this function by being with this person, which kind of charges up the inferior function in the other. It gives that person an experience of their inferior function through it being essentially sort of energized by being with the other person who has it as a dominant function. And it's almost like, you could almost say it's almost not an addictive thing, but kind of like that. It's like a temporary high, if you like, of having that inferior function energized by the interaction and the connection, and that can be a very powerful experience. So there can be this initial excitement of connection that brings the two opposite types together, but then they can each be triggered or overwhelmed by the dominant function in the other person. So it's like the opposites attract type thing. It draws these two functions together, but then there can be the reaction of experiencing the other person's dominant function in an overwhelming way. When they live out of that function, can feel like a jolt to the system that is almost like an emotional trigger that can cause the hurt, the conflict, and so on. And I'll go into each of the types, like on the board here. I'll go into each of them in a minute, sort of explain what it could look like for each pairing. But it's kind of like that. Those inferior and dominant function draws the couple together, but then when each are living naturally out of that function, some of the ways that function operates can kind of pull them apart. It can sort of have that equal and opposite reaction that pulls them apart, and which takes some time to get over. But then once the couple get over it, that dominant inferior dynamic wants to kind of bring them back together, and there can be sort of this drawing in, pulling out, drawing in and pulling out, moving into the relationship space and then being forced out of it and back in and out of it again, which can be very draining and exhausting for a couple. So it's really important for an opposite type relationship to recognize this and be conscious about it. And I think that's the other point that needs to be made, is that because of that opposite type dynamic, when they're on, when it's kind of a positive thing, it can be very naturally dynamic and interesting. But it's like it requires, the relationship requires a consciousness to eliminate, which is probably impossible, but minimize the things that trigger the couple into essentially trigger each other. And I think that's through understanding one another, as opposed to trying to get the other to be like themselves. So a lot of conscious efforts required to keep the relationship functioning, which can be exhausting. However, not being conscious about the differences will kind of bring about the conflict, or bring about these reactions that we can have to the other person's dominant function. So there seems to be a phenomenon whereby the more different we are from the other person, the greater the vulnerability is to wanting to change them, wanting them to become like us. And there's a phrase called the Pygmalion Project, which is essentially what that is. It's trying to kind of coach the other to be like themselves. And that ultimately doesn't work. It may have a marginal difference to the relationship, in the sense that the other person may change a little bit in a positive direction for the other person, like they make some adjustments for the other person that is a benefit to them, like it actually helps sort of develop them as a person. But the other 95% is wasted energy. And I think the way a opposite type relationship couple can better serve themselves and each other is by sitting down and helping the other to get to know the other. So so you sit down and sort of say, okay, I want to understand your world. What goes on for you? How do you think? How do you process? What happens to you when this sort of situation occurs? And it's that really getting to know how the other person ticks and operates that's going to bring about, I think, the more change and understanding, because once we understand where they're coming from, we can make adjustments to help them out. And we can be doing that from a place of love essentially, but also once we really get an understanding that the other person is so different and why they're different, then we can almost have fun with it. We can laugh about the differences, and we can be mindful of how the other might take things and make adjustments ourselves to help the other person. And I think that is both a growing agent for the individuals in the relationship. It actually helps build maturity, depth of connection, and those sorts of things. But it can also be a tiring thing, because we really want to be with people that we can just disarm ourselves, relax completely with, be ourselves, and the other get it. That's what most of us want. And in opposite type relationships, that is a difficult place to get to. It requires a lot of conscious work in order to, I think, bring about that more, let me just be myself in this environment. It's not that the couple need to not be themselves for it to work, but it seems to require this kind of in the background awareness of the differences to avoid the negative things that can happen in the dynamic. I won't go into this in much detail, but there seems to be a correlation between the inferior and dominant function dynamic with an opposite type couple and what we call the imago image, whereby we are attracted to people that have the positive and negative traits of our significant caregivers. So how that can look is someone grew up in a family where there was a really gregarious father, but a emotionally unavailable mother, let's say. And then that person, that child grows up and finds somebody who has that gregarious, closed-off nature, and is both attracted to the gregarious part of the person, but also is attracted to the emotional unavailability of the person as well, because it's familiar from childhood. And then there's that pull in of the gregariousness, so they're kind of attracted to that, but then they're wounded and hurt by the emotional unavailability. And I think that sort of dynamic can be easily seen also in opposite type relationships. So I think it's just worth just putting out there as an interesting observation. So unfortunately, opposite type relationships can be naturally draining, whereby being around that dominant function all the time can have a draining effect on the other person, because that function just does not come naturally to the other at all. But they're attracted to it because of that inferior function that they have. So it's really important for opposite type relationships just to be aware of this fact, and if they're choosing to be together, they've got to find a way to work that through to grow the relationship as much as they can into a satisfying one. So let's have a look at the board I've got here and go through each of the type differences and just sort of see how it could operate. So for the INTP and the ESFJ, so just like I was saying before, the second and third function are quite the same but in reverse. So like in the middle of things, the two types are very similar. It's that first and fourth function that's the problem. So for this couple, the introverted thinker could be very much attracted to that extroverted feeling function in the other person. Be like far out, like they're just that emotional energy and that warmth and
attention that they're giving me with their feeling can just be overwhelming for the INTP, and can sort of draw them in. Likewise, the ESFJs, that extroverted feeling dominant function, could be drawn to that logic and that the stillness that the INTP can have, that sort of opposite to sort of that active FE, and so sort of feel grounded from the INTP. So that grounding that is offered to the ESFJ, and that sort of emotional availability that draws the ENTP in, that's what could draw them in. But then after a while, those functions can drain each other. So, like for the INTP, that FE just gets draining for them. Or if the ESFJ gets upset and sort of acts out of that extroverted feeling function, that could feel really overwhelming to the INTP. Similarly, that containedness of the INTP could be very draining for an ESFJ who's wanting them to come out of their shell more, and so it starts to create a dynamic problem between them. So that is a way it could happen for the INTP and the ESFJ. So just quickly, the ISTP and the ENFJ could have a similar dynamic to the INTP and the ESFJ. So that dynamic might be quite similar.
For the INFP,
they could be drawn to the ESTJ's ability to just extrovert their themselves, essentially. To be decisive and to be to know what it is that they want to say and know it so easily and just say it so easily could just be a real breath of fresh air for the INFP. Similarly, for the ESTJ, they could be really drawn to the depth
of the INFP.
Their ability to hold so much, in a sense, unprocessed information, and just sort of sit with everything with such ease, and that the stillness, but the warm stillness that the INFP can provide, can be like a real soft pillow for the ESTJ, who's really in their environment, they're always on. So that could be what draws them together. But then the ESTJ having a bad day extroverts their negativity of really, if they're upset or whatever, that could just be like an atom bomb for the INFP, who's just shocked to the core with what's being said.
So for the ESTJ,
it could appear as though nothing's really phasing the INFP. Like that, where are their opinions? Where are their, where are they? They're not standing for anything. They're almost see-through to the ESTP. Like where are your convictions? Or like what are you thinking? What are your thoughts? Communicate. Get it out. And this sort of thing could happen. So for the ISFP and the ENTJ, we've got a similar dynamic to the INFP and the ESTJ, because the dominant and auxiliary functions are the same. But there could be just a variation of that taking place. The INFJ and the ESTP's ability to be so comfortable in the sensory world and negotiating and just that confidence that they have in the external environment can be very intriguing to an INFJ who finds that environment a difficult place to negotiate, almost like a foreign world, and so can sort of feel so much at ease with the ESTP, who can negotiate and work in that environment with a lot of ease. Similarly, for the ESTP, they can be drawn to the depth of the INFJ, that the ability to see beyond the obvious in the sensory world could be quite an attractive and interesting and intriguing function. However, the ESTP will only who may be interested in that depth can easily, without really thinking anything of it, disengage from that depth very quickly and just move on to something else, to another situation or another environment. And for the INFJ, that can feel almost like somebody, like grabbing a plant by the base and just pulling the plant or the tree out of its foundations, pulling it out by the roots. It can be just a very sudden shock to the system. Whereas for the ESTP, that the INFJ's ability to see beyond the obvious can just feel overwhelming and threatening for them, and draining as well, and can be a bit scary, because the ESTP finds it impossible to control and negotiate NI insights, because they're intangible essentially. So there can be that attraction to them and be intrigued by them, but also have an aversion to them, because they essentially can't control the insight that the INFJ might intuit. For the INTJ and the ESFP, again, could have a very similar dynamic to the INFJ and the ESTP. So the last dynamic is the ISTJ and the ENFP, and the ISFJ and the ENTP. So we've got the introverted sensing and extroverted intuition. So for the ISTJ and the ISFJ, and the ISFJ, there can be an attraction to the out-of-the-box nature of the ENFP, ENTP. The randomness can be quite exciting, sort of thinking outside the box, and it's like it just could tickle the funny bone, if you like, of the SI DOMs, and sort of open them up to seeing things from a totally different way, and that can be quite intriguing. Similar for the extroverted intuitives, they can be drawn to the stillness and the predictability of SI DOMs, and that they kind of help ground them in a way, and maybe even give them some respite from their extroverted intuition about just doing things the tried and true way to a limited degree. They could be attracted to that initially. However, after a while, the ENFP and the ENTP can just get bored with things being predictable and the same, and following the rules, and seeing it as a very inflexible way to live, and can just be a very draining place for an ENFP or an ENTP to occupy. And so there can be just a reaction to what can appear to be rigidity in the SI DOMs. For the SI DOMs, that it's like their funny bone can just be tickled too much with that randomness of the extroverted intuition, and can feel to the SI DOMs it's like scattering their processes around, like messing with their systems and structures, and can just get tired of having things seen in very random and what could be very chaotic way. And so that can be draining and threatening for the SI DOM who could react to that. So hopefully that helps to sort of illustrate some of the challenges that opposite types can have. And the purpose of this video really is to just highlight the differences so that opposite types are able to understand why they're different, and that those differences, while can be
problematic and draining. I think when a couple decide to get to know the other from a place of acceptance and accepting the differences as opposed to trying to change the other to be like themselves, that there can be a real depth of maturity and growth that can take place both within each individual but also within the realm of the couple, and taken and if that's done successfully, it could become a real powerhouse couple in the sense of where one is strong, the other finds that a vulnerability in a difficult area, and so the couple can really work to help each other and also help the couple to achieve as a couple by harnessing the strengths of those dominant functions and sort of flip them into a strength and minimize those weaknesses that can occur when a couple find themselves in conflict over those differences and spend a lot of their energy trying to change the other person to be like them. So I hope this is an encouragement and a helpful video to you. Thanks again, patrons, for your support, and I'll see you in another video.